Drifting between the fractured remnants of forgotten worlds, Jace Ryland monitored the old starboard console, its dull glow barely illuminating the dark cockpit. His ship, the Wandalight, creaked as its aged hull skimmed the edge of a debris field orbiting a nameless moon. He wasn't expecting anything, not here, not in this quadrant stripped clean by scavengers and war. This was the place you passed through, never stopped in. But then the console chirped, a faint pulse. An old, analog beacon deep band. Ancient. He frowned. No one used deep band anymore. He fine-tuned the receiver manually. Static. Then a single ping. Then silence again. The beacon's origin was less than 100 kilometers away, tucked in the shadows of the moon's gravity well. He hesitated. A signal this week could be centuries old, maybe longer. But there was something in that silence, intent. Jace adjusted course. Minutes later, the silhouette of the vessel came into view, massive, bulbous, overgrown with asteroid crust. No markings on the exterior, but the design was unmistakable, pre-unification Zarati, extinct for over 2 centuries. A graveyard piece. The ship didn't belong here. Jace suited up, cycled the airlock, and floated across in silence. The Relic's hull was cold, covered in impact scarring and solar erosion. He breached a side panel and squeezed through, guided only by a handheld scanner and flickering emergency lights that should have gone dark decades ago. Inside, the corridors were eerily intact, almost too clean. No atmosphere, but signs of movement, disturbed dust, freshly scratched paneling. Claw marks. Some deep, others shallow. He followed them deeper, stepping over rusted-out grates and through sagging doorways. Something, or someone, had been here recently. Half a level down, his scanner blipped again. Organic. Faint heat signatures. Heart rate elevated. Multiple. Jace froze, then moved forward silently. The air was thin here, some emergency system must have partially restored it. The chamber at the end of the corridor was dimly lit by a failing overhead strip. What he saw rooted him in place. A figure, hunched and restrained, sat slumped against a wall. Feline, humanoid, unmistakably Zarati. Her fur was matted, limbs bound with old alloy shackles. Her breathing was rapid but shallow. Her body blocked something, no someone's. 3 small cubs, barely the size of his forearm, cowered behind her, their wide eyes locked onto him. Not a sound came from them. Trained silence. Instinct for survival. The mother stared back, her eyes fierce despite her condition. She hissed, not in fear but warning. Jace didn't raise his weapon. He knelt, slowly setting his scanner down. He spoke quietly. "I'm not here to hurt you." The mother didn't respond. One of the cubs shifted, revealing a raw patch on its side. Malnourished, dehydrated, but alive. Barely. Jace looked around. The restraints were crude, not of Zarati make, more recent. Piratical, probably. Someone had repurposed this relic for something darker. Trafficking. He'd seen it before. Then something had gone wrong. Whoever held them had vanished. Died, maybe? But the prisoners remained. Forgotten. He pulled a tool from his belt and moved toward the restraints. The mother growled low. Her claws extended, despite her weakness. "I'm going to get you out," he said firmly. "But you need to let me." Still, no answer. He showed her the tool. Waited. Then, slowly, her body eased an inch to the side. Permission. Or surrender. The lock cracked open with a sharp click. The mother flinched but didn't strike. He removed the shackle from her wrist. The skin beneath was raw. She curled her arms around her cubs protectively. The youngest tried to crawl under her leg. Jace scanned the chamber. No food, little water. No waste system. They'd been here, surviving for weeks. Months, maybe. Alone. He triggered his comm. Boarding successful. Found survivors. Non-human. 4 total. Preparing extraction. His ship's AI pinged back. Atmospheric levels in the Zarati vessel were dropping rapidly. That's when he noticed it, the low hum of a reactor coil beginning to fluctuate. He pulled up the diagnostic interface from a nearby console. The readings made his stomach turn. The core wasn't just old, it was destabilizing. They didn't have time. He returned to the mother. Her eyes searched his face, still cautious. But the moment had changed. She saw something in his urgency. In the way he moved, checking each cub, evaluating the quickest route out. He wasn't here for profit. He didn't walk away when things got dangerous. He leaned close. You come with me now, or no one makes it out. Her claws retracted. She nudged the cubs forward. Jace scooped two into a thermal sling and offered a hand to the third. The mother rose, staggering, but upright. The ship groaned beneath them. Jace moved fast. And for the first time in days, or years, someone was moving with him. The moment they crossed the airlock threshold into the Wanderlight, the mother collapsed, her legs finally giving out. Jace caught her just in time, easing her down as the cubs clung to her, their wide eyes darting in every direction. He worked quickly, sealing the airlock and purging the containment protocols. The ship's sterile interior contrasted sharply with the filth they'd escaped, but there was no time for comfort. The radiation from the Zarati vessel's failing reactor was climbing. Jace activated the medbay AI, grabbing in 4 kit and laying out trauma blankets. The mother's vitals were erratic, dehydration, nutrient loss, signs of long-term restrained trauma. Her wrists were raw, her breathing shallow but defiant. He administered a basic stabilizer, checking her for further internal damage. No major bleeding, but her muscles were beginning to atrophy. He avoided sudden movements. Every time he leaned in, she tensed, ready to strike. Still no words. No questions. Just pure, unwavering suspicion. The cubs huddled close, silent and thin, but otherwise uninjured. Their behavior puzzled him, not just the silence, but the way they never cried or whimpered. Conditioned responses. Fear-based training. These weren't freeborn children. They'd grown up in captivity, maybe never known sunlight or open air. It sickened him. He brought out protein paste and water. Slowly, cautiously, he placed them on a tray, then backed away. The mother's eyes followed every movement. When he moved aside, she crawled forward, sniffed the paste, and nudged a packet toward the nearest cub. Only when they began eating did she take any for herself. Even starved, her instinct was to feed them first. No hesitation. No words. He stepped into the adjacent console room and began combing through the Zarati ship logs. Most files were corrupted or manually wiped. What remained confirmed his suspicion. The ship had been recovered decades ago and retrofitted by pirates as a mobile cargo prison. Logs detailed crude containment routines, nutrient schedules, shock cycles. Dates were sporadic, suggesting poor maintenance. There was no crew listed in the last entries, just a final diagnostic entry mentioning reactor instability. No emergency distress sent. The prison had been abandoned. Whoever chained them there had left them to die slowly. The reality settled like weight on his chest. This wasn't a failed operation, it was a burial. The mother and her cubs were collateral. Forgotten property. He couldn't fathom how they survived so long. Scavenging water from condensation lines, stretching nutrient packs, clawing into maintenance panels for heat. Survival, clawed out of rust and shadow. Back in the medbay, she was sitting up now, weak but alert. He approached, gently placing a diagnostic pad near her forearm. She didn't resist this time. Her gaze locked onto his face as though trying to decipher his intentions down to the molecular level. "I'm Jace," he said calmly. "You don't have to be afraid." Still silence. But something shifted. Her shoulders, once taut with tension, dropped slightly. Not trust. But recognition, he hadn't hurt her. That mattered. He tapped the console to access the universal translator, pulling in archived Zarati phonetics. The language pack hadn't been used in over a century. It took several minutes to compile. He showed her the display. "You can speak if you want. It's safe." She didn't respond. But then, in a hoarse, nearly broken voice, she rasped, "Why?" The question hung there, sharp and direct. It wasn't just confusion, it was suspicion carved into her soul. Why save us? Why help? Why risk anything? Jace didn't offer a long speech. He didn't talk about morals, or empathy, or justice. He simply answered, "Because you were left. And no one should be." Her eyes flickered. She looked at her cubs, then back at him, as if trying to weigh that sentence against her entire life of suffering. He didn't press her for anything more. He turned away, pulled up the NAV charts, and began plotting a course out of the system. The Wandalite needed to clear the radiation field, and he needed a station with advanced medical gear. As he worked, he felt movement behind him. The mother had stood again. Her steps were unsure, but she walked over, cubs trailing behind her. She didn't speak further, but when Jace pointed to a set of padded chairs by the NAV screen, she nodded and sat down. The cubs nestled against her. One of them reached for a discarded tool on the panel and began turning it over curiously. He said nothing. Just let them be. They weren't safe yet. But they were no longer alone. The moment the reactor warning flashed, Jace knew they were out of time. The countdown wasn't a bluff. Old Zarati cores didn't fail slowly. They ruptured violently, sending waves of radiation and shrapnel in every direction. He dropped into the pilot's seat, inputting escape trajectory. The ship's auto-NAV blared a warning, too slow. His vessel wasn't equipped for sudden atmospheric exits with passengers. Mass ratios were off. Engine strain was too high. But the only other option was death. He rerouted power from non-essentials, cut gravity, and bled reserve coolant into the engine chamber. The ship groaned, hull plating flexing as the burn kicked in harder than rated. The Zarati mother gripped the armrest, shielding her cubs again, not from distrust, but because she understood something was wrong. He glanced back once. Her eyes were calm now, not panicked. That trust had formed fast. Maybe too fast. But there was no time to question it. The blast from the Relic ship triggered mid-ascent. A rolling burst of plasma surged through space behind them, shaking the Wandalite as the shields flared. The engine sputtered, then caught. The ship surged forward. The mother growled low as the cubs whimpered. They broke free from the danger radius just before the reactor's full collapse. Debris scattered behind them, a few chunks bouncing off the shielded hull. Jace adjusted course, pushing the vessel into the nearest low-radiation lane. He collapsed into the auxiliary chair once they were clear, chest heaving. The ship held. Barely. Internal heat was still climbing. He had minutes before systems began failing. He needed a radiation buffer, not one that protected the ship, but one that protected his passengers. His suit could handle it, but they couldn't. And he had nothing on board certified for cross-species exposure mitigation. Except one thing. A sealed crate in storage, Zarati biotech from an earlier salvage haul. He'd kept it for parts, maybe to sell later. Now it was the only chance they had. He cracked it open and found what he needed: tissue symbiotic graft mesh and a portable stabilizer. Illegal in most systems, highly adaptable, and dangerously untested. But adaptable meant hope. The mesh reacted instantly to the Zarati's biometrics. He applied it first to the mother, the threads curling into her fur and anchoring to her skin. Her body tensed, then adjusted. The cubs squirmed, but she held them, steadying their limbs as Jace wrapped the rest of the mesh across their backs and shoulders. Within seconds, their respiration evened. Bio-readings dropped back toward normal. Containment was working. She watched him carefully the whole time. This wasn't blind trust, it was observation. She was learning. Not just about what he was doing, but why. Her gaze flicked to his hands, the precision of his work, the steadiness of his breath. She understood he wasn't just helping, he was risking everything. And he wasn't obligated. He gained nothing by keeping them alive. Nothing measurable, anyway. She spoke again, softer this time. "You lose something." Jace paused. He hadn't expected that. She tilted her head, watching him with intense clarity. You run, like before. He blinked, thrown off. What? She tapped her chest, then pointed to him. Pain, there. Past. You run now, not for us. For guilt. He didn't respond right away. He hadn't said anything about the war, or the mission gone wrong 5 years ago, or the civilians trapped in a mining station he failed to evacuate. She didn't need the details. She could see it written in him. I left people behind, he said. Didn't get a second chance then. She nodded slowly. Now you do. He didn't reply. Instead, he finished the graft work, scanned their vitals one more time, and began system checks. Stabilizers were holding. Hull temperature dropping. The ship had survived the worst of it, and so had they. He looked back one more time. The smallest cub was nestled into the curve of her side, already dozing. The other two had taken to fiddling with a tool he'd left behind. Harmless curiosity, but unmistakable in what it meant. They were adjusting. Faster than he expected. The mother met his gaze again. This time, no question, no suspicion. Just acknowledgement. The kind that needed no words. They were alive. Because he chose not to run. The station orbiting Seria 9 was quiet, more of a forgotten checkpoint than a bustling port. Jace docked manually, bypassing standard registration. The Wanda light wasn't flagged, but questions would only slow him down. He filed an emergency request for medical access under an old veteran priority code, still valid, just rarely used. The system hesitated, then accepted. Doors cycled open. No alarms. No security. Perfect. He carried one of the cubs, the smallest, still recovering. The mother followed close, 2 other cubs held to her chest. Their eyes tracked everything, every flicker of light, every panel hum. Her expression never changed. She moved like a soldier, each step calculated, always placing herself between danger and her young. The medical bay's autodock reacted immediately to their biosignatures. The system recognized Zarati markers, outdated but still logged in ancient medical archives. It scanned for trauma, mapped neural activity, projected long-term instability. The results were grim. Malnutrition, cellular decay, radiation stress. One of the cubs had slight bone density issues from extended zero-G confinement. But they were all treatable. The station's AI requested authorizations. Jace overrode them with a manual consent form, inputting himself as guardian. Temporary, he told himself. Just until they recovered. As the machines began treatment, the mother stood rigid. When the cubs cried out during the scan, she almost tore the restraint brackets off. Jace didn't stop her. He placed a hand on her arm, not forcing her back, just anchoring her. She didn't pull away. The AI voice chimed, cold and clinical. Subject requires integration monitoring. Suggest mental health eval. He muted the system. Treatment took hours. Jace didn't leave. He sat nearby, watching every pulse of data on the feed. Zarati physiology was complex, denser organs, unique lymph systems, adaptive metabolic shifts. But the cubs responded well. Their vitals climbed. By the 3rd hour, 2 were alert again, poking around the sterile equipment with twitchy fingers. The mother watched everything. She didn't sleep. She didn't ask questions. But she wasn't tense anymore. Not exactly. She was observant. When Jace stepped away briefly to contact the docking control, she followed him without a word. Not to confront, but to see. To understand what came next. He told her plainly. They need time. Weeks, maybe more. Full recovery will take longer. After that, you decide where you want to go. She looked confused. You give choice. You're not cargo, he said. You're people. She processed that slowly. We were not. I know. It wasn't an emotional exchange. There were no tears, no sweeping words of gratitude. Just silence, heavy with implication. She didn't thank him, and he didn't expect it. Jace found an old crew quarter and retrofitted it into a temporary living space. Cushions, light dimmers, nutrient dispensers. Nothing luxurious, but safe. The cubs took to it quickly. They explored, napped, even tried mimicking the way Jace flicked switches. One of them, the boldest, mimicked a salute. It startled him. The mother watched that moment. Something flickered in her gaze. Not pride, but recognition. Later that night, she finally spoke again. Name? He looked up from the maintenance panel. Jace Ryland. She nodded slowly. Talna. My name. He repeated it carefully. She corrected his accent once, then nodded again. It was the first exchange that felt like introduction instead of interrogation. Over the next few days, they began to settle. He taught the cubs a few basic words in common. Talna, in turn, watched his routines, how he maintained the engines, calibrated the NAV grid, handled supply logs. She wasn't asking for escape anymore. She was learning. Then the message came. Encrypted, unsigned, routed through black channels. A bounty listing. 1 Zarati adult, 3 young. No names. No charges. Just a payment offer. Hi. He deleted it without blinking. But he knew what it meant. The people who had chained her weren't pirates. They were contractors. Smugglers, probably tied to one of the core syndicates. They didn't forget lost assets. And they didn't forgive witnesses. He locked the station's transponder to a false registry and reprogrammed all outbound scans to scramble their biosignatures. It wouldn't hold forever, but it would buy time. That night, as he ran diagnostics, Talna stepped into the cockpit. She stared at the stars through the viewport, silent for a long while. Then she said, "We are hunted." "Yes." "You stay?" Jace didn't hesitate. "Until you tell me not to." She nodded once. "Then we fight." The incoming vessel didn't broadcast any identification. It didn't have to. The angular profile, the dull matte black plating, the irregular pulse of its drives, it was a Hunter-class raider, one designed for stealth insertion and fast captures. Built to disable, not destroy. Jace knew the type. Private sector contract, always tied to syndicates or former military freelancers. No rules, just results. He rerouted power to the inertial dampeners and took manual control. Evasion was the only viable option. They couldn't outgun them, not in a straight fight. The Wandalite had no forward weapons, only 2 defense turrets and an EMP launcher meant more for shipyard work than space combat. But its frame was light, engines tight and overclocked. It could run circles around heavier craft, if he could time it right. Talna remained at his side, quiet, eyes locked on the enemy vector. She understood without being told that the enemy wouldn't aim for a kill shot. They would try to disable, then board. Capture was the goal. Retrieval of assets. Her and the cubs. Jace veered the ship into a narrow debris cluster, a remnant from a past orbital skirmish. Metal shards, dead satellites, fragmented station pieces, dangerous, but dense enough to confuse targeting systems. The pursuer hesitated, slowing slightly, then accelerated. They were committing. No bluff. No posturing. They wanted their quarry back. Talna activated the internal bulkheads, sealing off critical zones. If they were boarded, she wanted control points isolated. The cubs were secured in the reinforced chamber he'd modified during their stay on the station, shielded behind multilayered alloy plating and false thermal signatures. As far as any scans were concerned, the Wandalite carried only 2 passengers. The first disabling beam missed by a hair. Blue static shimmered across their aft shield. Another second and the engines would have gone dark. Jace pushed them into a dive, slicing through the wreckage field. Fragments scraped the hull. No real damage, but pressure alarms flared. He muted them. He didn't need reminders of what was at stake. He triggered the EMP launcher, fired blind. The pulse bloomed in a radius, electromagnetic static lighting the field like a storm. The Hunter's ship veered, shields flickering under the disruption. Their precision faltered. That was enough. Jace cut power to all non-essential systems, faking a stall. From the outside, the Wandalite looked like it had gone dark, dead in space. The hunter's ship adjusted course, slowing to initiate capture protocols. That's when Talna moved. She had already donned one of the backup vac suits, not built for her kind, but modified enough. She accessed the starboard maintenance hatch, dropped into the hardline conduit that led to the outer stabilizers. From there, she could cross the hull using the external tether lines. Jace rerouted atmosphere flow to prevent decompression alerts. She moved like she'd done it before. The hunter ship docked. A clamp extended, locking to the rear port. Jace disabled the countermeasures manually. Let them think the ship was abandoned, no resistance. Let them walk in confident. 3 entered. Exosuits, mid-grade, not top-tier but protected enough. One carried a plasma leash. Another had a stun rifle. The last, a scanner. They moved with speed and efficiency. Too efficient for pirates. These were professionals. Retrieval agents. Syndicate tied or worse. Jace didn't confront them. He waited. They reached the central corridor. The scanner registered no lifeforms. No hostiles. It blinked green. Then Talna struck. She dropped from the access shaft like a blade, tearing into the lead agent with a makeshift spike she'd crafted from ship plating. His visor cracked, pressure equalized. He didn't scream. The second turned to aim but was too slow. She disarmed him with a twist, then crushed his helmet against the bulkhead. The third tried to run. She let him. On purpose. Jace locked down the hatch behind him. The last one didn't make it more than 10 feet before she was on him. Silence returned. Talna re-entered the cockpit 10 minutes later. No blood. No wasted movement. She handed Jace the agent's data tags, already scrubbed. They know you helped. I figured. They will send more. I know. She studied him, then said, Still stay? Until the end, he replied. She didn't thank him. Instead, she sat beside him, eyes forward. Outside, stars shifted as the ship accelerated away from the wreckage. For the first time, they weren't just running. They were choosing their path.